Let's dive in, and we have, a mountain of source material today.
We really do.
We've got the Commonwealth thesis, the creed of conscious capitalism, a huge master keynote.
And they're all proposing something, well, pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, extraordinary is the word. We are not talking about, some modest incremental change here.
No, not at all. This is a blueprint for designing, literally, a new civilization from the ground up.
And that's the core context we need to hold on to, isn't it? The vision, which is championed by its founder, Bradicius, it's not just theoretical.
Exactly. It's a highly detailed plan. It's centered around Shiloh, a physical prototype community in Texas.
That prototype.
Yeah, this place is meant to be the flagship, the practical, living model for a much wider social and economic alternative they're calling the Commonwealth.
Okay, so our mission today is to take this enormous multi-decade proposal and really distill it down for you.
Right.
We need to understand three things. First, the core rationale, their critique of civilization. Second, the specific legal architecture they've designed to get this, parallel sovereignty.
And third, the nuts and bolts economic plan, which, even includes their own internal currency concept.
It's a huge undertaking, and they seem to know it. They don't shy away from the scope at all.
No. They frame this whole thing as the launch of the new Texan Renaissance. They're talking about building a blueprint for multi-generational resilience and prosperity, not just, funding another housing development.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me, because the first step in their thesis is the diagnosis. Why is any of this even necessary?
Right.
The sources start with what they call the impetus, arguing modern American society is deeply unwell, afflicted by what they term unseen chains. So what exactly is their critique of the existing system?
Well, they argue there's been this profound erosion of virtue, a systematic collapse of culture, really.
So a cultural collapse.
Yeah, and their critique zeroes in on how major institutions now operate with what they call inverted incentives.
Inverted incentives, meaning what?
Meaning they profit from societal decay, not from supporting human flourishing.
Okay, can you give us an example of that?
The medical system is a huge target for them. They argue it's predatory, that it's designed to manage sickness, not cure it.
So it creates dependency?
It creates systemic dependence on pharmaceuticals, making citizens reliant on a sick care structure that actually profits from chronic illness. That's a perfect example of one of those unseen chains. You're dependent on the system for your health, for your information.
And the information environment is obviously a big part of this too, right? The whole fabric of public dialogue.
Absolutely. They describe a media apparatus that, in their words, fundamentally manufactures illusions. It distorts truth, it stirs division, and it molds public sentiment to serve certain corporate or political ends.
And economically.
Economically, they see the system as hostile to working families. They claim the American dream has been twisted into a nightmare of debt, anxiety, and unending toil. They paint a pretty grim picture of an agricultural system that pervades toxins and a financial system just designed to create dependency.
That is an incredibly bleak diagnosis, and what really stood out to me is how the sources immediately pivot to history.
So Rome.
Exactly. They draw this stark parallel between modern America and the twilight of the Roman Empire, suggesting that history is, quite literally, repeating itself.
And what's fascinating is they don't just make some vague comparison. They detail 6 specific shared afflictions. They argue that if you just look at the symptoms, we're in the same stage of decline.
So let's walk through those. Where do they start with the parallels?
The first one is bread and circus, the pacification of the citizens.
So in Rome, that was gladiator games and free grain.
Right. And today, the sources argue, it's engineered outrage cycles and endless digital entertainment. TikTok or streaming services performing the exact same psychological function as the Colosseum.
It distracts people from duty and substance.
A focus on spectacle over actual civic engagement, but it's not just cultural.
It's governance, too.
Both.
Yeah.
The second point is moral decay and cultural inversion, where basic virtue is mocked and vice is glorified. They see a total reversal of traditional values.
Okay, so you have entertainment and moral decay. What's next?
Third, and this one is critical for their eventual solution, is economic manipulation and usury.
So not just taxes.
No, it's about inflationary policy, currency debasement.
Yeah.
Things engineered to trap families in debt and systematically drain wealth from the productive class.
Which explains why their solution is so focused on economic independence. What about the state itself?
That's point 4. Bureaucratic bloat and technocratic overreach. The sheer weight of regulation and administrative complexity just stifles innovation and local business.
And number 5.
Collapse of the family, which they see as the fundamental unit of a strong society breaking down.
And finally, I'm guessing, corruption at the top.
You guessed it. The 6th point is political corruption and corporate capture. They describe a system where the government has been captured by these huge conglomerates.
Ruled by sold-out politicians.
Yes, ruling in the interest of oligarchs, mirroring the final days of the Roman Senate.
So the critique is comprehensive. Health, culture, economics, governance, all fundamentally broken and structurally hostile to the family. What's the logical conclusion they draw from this?
They conclude that trying to reform a macro system this corrupted is, in their words, a Sisyphean effort.
A fool's errand.
It is. The machine is too vast, the interests are too entrenched, and the incentives are completely inverted. The system is designed to profit from the decay. So, for them, the only realistic path forward is not to salvage the old world, but to design and build a new model that can operate in parallel.
And that is the pivot point. The diagnosis is incredibly bleak. So where does this new moral order actually begin?
It starts with what they call the Great Inquiry, asking the question, how should we live our lives in a way that honors God? And that question leads them directly to defining the Commonwealth.
Okay, and the Commonwealth is not what most people might think. It's not a government.
No, in their classical definition, it's not a government or just a legal entity. It's defined as a moral order, a living union of people bound together by covenant to foster the common weal.
A moral order.
The focus is on shared ethical obligations and mutual well-being, standing deliberately against a world they see as defined by abstract power and, commodification.
And the physical anchor for this moral order, the prototype community, is Shiloh.
Right. Located on 86 acres of ancestral land, right in the middle of the heavily growing Texaplex corridor. The sources describe it as a living, breathing prototype of a post-fragility, faith-based sovereign community.
And to make sure it stays true to that mission, it's dedicated to what they call a fourfold consecration.
It has 4 defined, untouchable purposes. First, it must be a sanctuary for families. There's a heavy focus on protecting children from what the sources identify as ideological indoctrination, commercial exploitation, and digital debasement.
Which seems like a direct response to those points about moral decay and collapse of the family from their critique.
It is. It's the antidote.
Okay, what are the other 3 purposes?
The second is a citadel of Christian virtue. They're very clear that worship is central to the community's structure, and Scripture is the honored foundation for law and life. Third, it's a prototype of regenerative civilization. So it's designed to be a living laboratory, integrating regenerative agriculture, decentralized microgrids, local resilience systems, all to achieve independence from fragile macro infrastructure.
So they're literally building physical and economic resilience right into the land use itself.
Exactly. And the fourth consecration point is a covenant for posterity. This is all about building structures that last for generations.
And this includes establishing what they call noble houses and knightly orders.
Yes, which are specifically designed to steward the community's long-term moral and physical responsibilities.
That brings us right to the operational architecture.
Right.
Because you can't build a resilient, multi-generational community without a really robust legal structure. So how do they operate in parallel to, but legally within, the existing U.S. framework?
They do it with something they call the Commonwealth Triad.
The triad.
This triad is the legal backbone. It's structured as 3 integrated components: the crown, the kingdom, and the enterprise, and each one fulfills a very specific purpose and jurisdiction.
All right, let's unpack the crown. It's described as the head of this whole organism.
The crown is established as an ecclesiastical trust, a 508c1a organization.
Okay, so for those of us not versed in the tax code, what does that actually do?
Right. In simple terms, this is the legal vehicle that holds the land and the core institutions in a permanent trust. It locks in the moral and spiritual mission forever, making the core operations and land untouchable by commercial debt or, external political pressure.
Right. And it's the entity that receives tax-deductible contributions.
Exactly. So the crown protects the mission and the assets. Then you have the social and economic engine, which is the kingdom.
The kingdom.
Correct. The kingdom is the Private Membership Association, or PMA. This is the body of the civilization. It's the engine where the actual life and commerce of the community happen. And because it's governed by private covenant, it legally operates under ecclesiastical jurisdiction, not public statutes.
And that grants them crucial freedoms.
It does. That layering is ingenious. The PMA becomes this critical legal firewall.
So what specific freedoms do the sources claim are protected by operating under private covenant?
They highlight several key areas where they believe the public system is either overregulated or just corrupt. The PMA is designed to protect freedom of holistic health. So, allowing for natural medicine and wellness practices under the umbrella of spiritual exercise. It protects food sovereignty, so they can do things like raw dairy operations, farm-to-table enterprise, free from heavy public regulation. And it protects freedom of education through their own established guilds and academies.
Okay, and the third part, the enterprise, that's the one that deals with the outside world.
Precisely. The enterprise, which they call the hands, is a social purpose corporation, an SPC. This is the part that interfaces with the public market.
So it can deal with vendors, banks.
External vendors, banks, contractors, all of it. For any large-scale commercial operations that support the Commonwealth. So you have the crown holding the keys, the kingdom running the day-to-day internal life, and the enterprise handling the outside world's money and contracts. It's compartmentalization for maximum resilience.
Let's turn to the economic engine driving all this, which is guided by their Commonwealth creed of conscious capitalism. And this is meant to be the direct solution to the usury and debt problems they identified in their big critique.
Yeah, this philosophy stands in direct opposition to what they call predatory capitalism. It's founded on a key principle: value creation over extraction. It states very clearly that profit must be the fruit of service, not manipulation.
And it emphasizes stewardship over consumerism.
Yes, rejecting the disposable culture that wastes resources and people.
So their definition of prosperity is much, much broader than just accumulating currency.
Oh, significantly broader. They define prosperity relationally. It's the flourishing of households, the fertility of soil, the vitality of culture, and the dignity you get from honest work. The whole economic structure is designed so that the core members, the farmers, the craftsmen, the teachers, can prosper and build generational wealth, free from the systemic inflation and debt traps they criticized earlier.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of that internal economy, because escaping those inflationary forces, that requires your own sovereign financial system, doesn't it?
It does.
How do the prosperity tokens and the member equity units actually function?
The prosperity tokens, or PTANAs, they're the circulatory system. They are internal use credits, essentially a private land-backed currency for services and trade circulating exclusively within the PMA economy.
So because they're private, they're immune to federal overreach or inflation.
That's the argument. They believe they can stabilize internal trade that way.
So that's the answer to that Roman usury critique, a stable, non-inflationary internal store of value for daily trade. And the MEUs, the member equity units, that's for long-term commitment.
Yes, the MEUs are internal equity-like tracking units. They're designed to reward a member's contribution over time because their value is tied directly to the collective performance, the land improvements, the economic engine of the PMA.
So it's a pathway to ownership.
A pathway to long-term security and equity ownership, yeah, all structured as a private mechanism immune to outside financial volatility.
The financial ambition here, though, it's not small scale. I mean, they're building a whole alternative economy. What do their financial projections even look like?
The goals are enormous. Shiloh, which is just phase one, the prototype, is targeted to achieve approximately $47 million in annual revenue by its 10th year.
47 million.
Yeah, diversified across internal operations, agriculture, hospitality.
And that's just the start. What does the scaling model project?
The expanded Commonwealth Capital macro node, which is phase two, is projected to reach between $110 million and $135 million in annual revenue by its own year 10.
Wow.
And the long-term vision, the network era, over 20 to 40 years, is a multi-node network reaching multi-billion-dollar valuations. They explicitly frame this as civilizational infrastructure building, not just a profitable enterprise.
That is a staggering scale of ambition. Let's switch gears a little to the cultural framework, which the sources argue is where the real value is. They claim culture is downstream from worship, and that necessitates a radical reshaping of identity.
It does. The goal is to move beyond a consumerist identity. They address this by creating a highly structured social system they call the Book of Titles.
The Book of Titles.
Which includes noble houses, knightly orders, guilds, and civic titles. This entire framework is designed to give people a profound sense of role, responsibility, and recognition that transcends, temporary consumer labels or political affiliation.
Okay, I have to stop you there. Noble houses and knightly orders. That sounds incredibly formal, almost medieval for a modern Texas community.
It does. It sounds very formal. But the sources are clear that the titles aren't about, feudal authority.
So what's the function then?
It's all about stewardship and legacy. The noble houses are meant to be multi-generational stewards of the core community vision, ensuring continuity of purpose.
I see. And the knightly orders?
They're structured to address specific community needs: defense, education, wellness, providing a framework for dedicated service and moral leadership. It gives you a structured identity that's rooted in service, not just residency.
It certainly provides a clear structure for responsibility. How does this community then scale geographically beyond just Shiloh?
The scaling plan is sequential. Phase 0 and I involved securing the land and building the initial Shiloh campus and its infrastructure, including that decentralized microgrid.
Okay.
Phase 2 is launching Commonwealth Capital, which is a larger, more urban hub. And from there, the goal is the network era,
The network era.
creating a constellation of settlements united under shared principles across Texas and then potentially across the nation, functioning as a resilient network.
And their choice of location is very strategic, isn't it?
Yeah.
They emphasize this Texas Renaissance, placing Shiloh right in that rapidly growing Texaplex corridor.
They see Texas as the ideal frontier for this, a magnet for disillusioned families, offering a template for future decentralized, resilient communities that can function effectively despite the perceived failure of centralized systems.
So let's bring this all back together. The core argument is powerful. The modern American system is exhibiting every single sign of Roman internal decay. And the proposed solution is to build a separate, lawful, and highly designed arc, the Commonwealth triad governed by private covenant, to fiercely protect faith, family, and enterprise from that decaying macro system.
And what's absolutely critical to their narrative is the claim that this is not an act of abandoning America.
Mm-hmm.
They argue that membership in the kingdom is, in fact, a fulfillment of what America was meant to be: a moral and religious people, voluntarily organized, self-governed. The movement positions itself as a rebellion against the forces destroying America, not against the nation itself.
That's a powerful distinction, attempting to balance that legal separation with a claim to a deeper patriotism. But that brings us to the provocative thought for you to consider.
Hold on.
These sources rely so heavily on the strength of private covenant and religious liberty, which are often the highest protected constitutional domains, to create a sovereign jurisdiction within the United States.
It raises some profound questions about the nature of sovereignty and liberty in the 21st century.
It forces us to ask, if economic and social resilience increasingly requires joining a highly structured, private, faith-based system like this one to escape the perceived tyranny of the public sphere.
Which is their entire premise.
Right. What does this trend suggest about the future viability of the general public citizenship those same sources claim to honor? Where does public law end and private covenant begin when the stakes are literally civilizational infrastructure?
The decision to join a parallel society like this,
Yeah.
it's not just an economic or social choice, is it? It's a declaration of where you believe true sovereignty now resides.
Exactly. A fascinating look at the growing dynamics of parallel societies. We encourage you to continue exploring the complex interplay between public law and private covenant.